really requires is that awareness. So it's about slowing down. I learned this myself. Parenting is something you do with the child, not to the child. And it's the same thing in any situation. More than anything, when you talk about healing or eliminating the generational patterning, so much of it is about noticing and being responsible.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Kitchen Table Conversations. Before we get into this really hearty and nutrient-rich conversation with my dear friend and guest, Wendy Silvers, I want to thank you for being here and also share that I start my calls with, or I intend to start all of my calls this way, but I often forget. So I'm going to be a little militant with myself and make sure that this is the first thing I say moving forward. And that's to explain the symbol that you see on the bottom of the promotional flyer that is promoting this call, and also on the website. And that is the symbol of the maiden mother crone. And to a little background, when I was writing the Liminal Odyssey, it was already to the interior designers when I woke up about 4:30 in the morning and I got these instructions, I should say, that every chapter should have a symbol kind of watermarked over the chapter title, and just a subtle image that would do nothing more than to just elevate the energy of that chapter. So I said, okay, I pulled the book back that morning from the interior designers right before it went to the publisher. And I went through the book and the chapters, and I appointed a chapter heading in the form of a symbol to represent that energy. And Maiden Mother Crone was one of them. And then it was suggested that I do the same for these podcasts, for the flyers, again, to elevate the energy. Not so subtle, because I'm obviously mentioning it here, but I want you to know why I've chosen the Maiden Mother Crone. And it chose me really for this particular call. It represents the triple goddess archetypes and a personality of the Maiden Mother Crone. That's really important to the Liminal Odyssey, but not just the book, but the philosophy that is now called the liminal coherence. And Wendy is a gorgeous example of the coherence of the Maiden Mother Crone. So I can't wait for you to experience that yourself. And I just want to say, usually I have a sort of a platform where I will start by introducing the guest by reading your bio. But Wendy, I really didn't feel like this was a typical call because I know how energetically informed you are. And also because I've known you for so long and I watched you walk and flow and also march in the world. And so that I know that these titles and, the things that I can read of all the things you've done and do not capture your energy. And I wanted everyone to experience you. All right. So, however, with respect to your walk in the world and the work that you do, I do have to mention a few things. And of course, you can add in and throw in whatever else wants to be said or needs to be said in that respect. And also to just like frame the energy here. So, we first met, though, I'm going to back up a little bit. We first met I think it was 2011 at an interfaith event up by your house. And then you invited me to your house and we sat down on your couch. And before I knew it, I was caught up in this topsy-turvy, serious energy that I just remember it felt like we were anchored, but the room was spinning around us. And then you stopped and you go, wait, we need to pray this. Let's pray in, I think were the words you used. And it was the first time in my life that I had ever experienced dynamic prayer. I don't know what you call it. I call it dynamic prayer. I know on your website, you've been described as the Jay-Z of prayer.
Like Gabby Bernstein. Yeah.
Oh yeah, quite an endorsement, because that's what I experienced. So first and foremost, you are a fierce manifester of that energy of dynamic prayer. But let me also share that you are the founder of the Million Mamas movement. But first and foremost, you're a mother, right? First
Yeah.
and foremost, you're a mama. And I and others affectionately call you Mama Wendy, but
Yeah.
it's really, in your work, and you manifest that through the work of the Million Mamas movement. You're the host of the Awakened Mother podcast, and you're a spiritual minister of the Agape Spiritual Center, and a fierce advocate for children's health as well, and so much more. All right. And so, Wendy, welcome.
Thank you so much, Sandy. It's so good to be with you, and hello to your audience.
Yeah, well, now they're your audience, and now everybody can witness what I witness with you in our time together. So I want to start by asking you, Wendy, would you take us back to when you first, became aware of your gifts that you show up with in the world? And you're also an intuitive, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, what was that day like? What was that liminal space like where you woke up? And then what was that moment of choice like that you said, I'm going that direction?
I'm not so sure it was a conscious choice. I remember when I was approximately, was I 20? I was somewhere like late teens, and I was dating this wild Argentinian guy, and I was in I was in Manhattan going to college, and I was home. My family had moved from New York to New Jersey, uh, to a place called Cherry Hill, and I was in Philly with some of my friends. I had these older friends who kind of corrupted me, and they took me to this restaurant called the Astral Plane, and there was a woman there who was an astrologer, and she met me, and she was very drawn to me, and she said to me that I was her teacher, and that I had this vast and great psychic gift. And I remember thinking, I'm hanging out at Studio 54 and Xenon. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. And I don't really know what you're talking about. And she was in her 50s. And I remember her name, I believe she's on the other side now. Her name is Lenny. And Lenny said, "You're my teacher." And and I remember she called me up one day because she was publishing a book. And she asked me, and I was doing, I think at that point, I finished college. I think I was doing PR. She asked me a question, and I answered her with full, genuine sincerity. And I believe it had something to do with self-responsibility. And she was not happy with my answer, but that's what it came through. So at that particular time when she told me, because I was involved with some recreational use of a particular substance, and she said to me, each time that I do that, it's like I am a Stradivarius violin, and each time I partake in this activity, it's like I'm throwing this violin into a lake. And so I remember when she said that, and it took a little while after that between the acknowledgement of my having this gift and the cessation of that activity. And then it came up again. So it's been this recurring. When I was approximately, I want to say 24, somebody else said they were going to be my teacher, and so it's been this thread throughout my life. So I believe I got very distracted when I did PR in the entertainment industry for quite a number of years, but it's always been at the center of my being, because being connected to spirit and truly opening myself up to be a vehicle and a vessel through which spirit can pour forth has been an underlying theme in my life. It's been a foundational desire and commitment throughout my entire life.
Wow. So you weren't ready when Lenny came to you. You had more living to do, right? Perhaps.
I believe what I really had to do was healing, was
Mm-hmm.
really recovering myself. And so that dovetailed with the living that I did, because it's part of being, in the human body, because it was really, I am very serious about the work that I do. So when somebody sits in front of me, when I go to speak somewhere, when I'm teaching something, it's very sacred. And so for her to tell me at that ripe age of like 18 or 19 that I was her teacher and I had this vast psychic gift, it was just like, wait, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with what you're telling me, because
That's a
it
lot of
seems
responsibility.
crazy.
Yeah.
And yet, of course, that desire to do that. But I do believe, I was actually having a dialogue with somebody earlier today, and I believe that I just didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know that the mother wound, which is something that I help other women heal, that mother sister wound, and I don't mean the biological sister, but that sisterhood wound, uh, was was so gaping inside of me that I think that a wise part of me knew that to be this vehicle and that vessel at that particular time in my life wasn't the right timing. And I did need a lot more tenderizing. And um, I also got to heal, and I got to discover more of the facets of myself so that I could weave them. I'm a weaver. Most of us are, but to weave all those different aspects so that I could be of maximum service to another human, which is so near and dear to my heart.
Yeah. Yeah. This is an example of enlightened self-interest, right? Where you are truly living into your soul's purpose, your divine assignment, your planetary gifts, and it's serving everyone. Which
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that there's a planetary gift or a soul, the soul purpose that wouldn't be. It has to be in its full integrity, which means it has to be in service to all. And that's always a good indication that you're on the right path. But
Mm-hmm.
it's so interesting, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I gathered, you went from being highly medicated to highly meditative, which I'm actually, I don't want to claim that word, but I love that. I heard that recently from you. You went
Yeah.
from, you need to be highly meditative.
Well, it's interesting because it was, yeah. I mean, it was something that I felt helped me be. It helped me. I don't know if there's anybody listening, but I know that I realized that I was living with a low level depression that emerged from my family of origin that I didn't really know how to address. And so and because of the trauma that I was holding in my being, I looked outside of myself to really heal that, to make me feel whole. And so when I engaged in that activity, there was that moment where I felt so whole. So it was a strategy that I used. But what's so curious about me, and I'm wondering if this is like this for other people, is that I always had this simultaneous awareness. So while I was engaged in this, I knew I was searching for God, for my connection with God.
Mhm.
Well, I remember having, an interdimensional experience. I was with two friends of mine, and we had been meditating. They were very spiritual, and I had this very interdimensional experience. And so my whole life, I have been searching for connection with God, searching for meaning, right? And I remember I was reading Freud in fifth grade. So I led my first seance when I was 8. So I have been, very much student, and now I'm always going to be a student, but now also a teacher. But that desire to know my oneness with God, that desire to connect with spirit in that, as we talk about that liminal space, to really absorb that, bring it in, integrate it, assimilate it, articulate it,
Right.
has been completely a driving force in my life.
When you're talking about the time it took for those signs to show up in your life and for you to have to go through these experiences and heal, right? You use that expression, heal. Healing requires that we become aware of those scars and or those wounds, right? As well as paying attention to the wounds that we self-inflict as well, on
Oh
how
yeah.
we behave. I lost my cool yesterday with the insurance agent on the phone. I actually have to write her an email and apologize. I should probably call her. I will call her after we're done here. I mean, that's healing, right? I've got to make amends with myself, but also my past. And I'm really interested that you brought up intergenerational trauma, because there's so much pervasive trauma in everyone's life. And it's not just necessarily trauma with like a big T trauma, or even small T trauma, like as opposed to a blunt force, actual violence upon you, or domestic verbal violence,
Right.
or long-term, too much for too long sort of trauma. But all that manifests into behaviors, right? A behavior pattern. Like my reaction to that agent yesterday was exactly how my father responded, in losing temper. The wick went from very long to bam, it went from a spark to a forest fire, right?
Right.
And I'm still healing that wound, but becoming aware of it and going, okay, I see where that was. And I don't think he would want me to carry on this legacy of
Right.
short-temperedness. It's
Right.
not good. It's not healthy. It was an assault on me. So how do you, work through that trauma or those patterns, or where do
Right.
you go for that awareness?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, even when you have years of training, like I have,
Yeah.
there's still moments, because we're in these human body suits. So there's still moments when we can get caught. And what it really requires is that awareness. So it's about slowing down. When we're moving really fast, a lot of times we're just operating from that reptilian brain. Like we're just like we're going. And then you had a trauma response, your amygdala got activated, and you just had a very unconscious reaction. So I like to say an apology is not an amends. So what is an amends? An amends is a conscious intention to amend my behaviors. So we develop strategies to survive our childhoods, to get through our lives, even as adults, right? Because I do a lot of work with moms and parents, and there's no greater crucible to see where some of the unresolved issues lie than when you become a parent, because there's this activation that happens on a dime, or there's a retort or a way of talking that happens that is not acknowledged in regular life. But when this little person is standing in front of you or doesn't want to do what you're asking them to do, it's like all of these unmet needs rise up. And the strategies to get somebody to listen to you, to get somebody to do what you're asking them to do, there's strategies. So the PS to that is the strategies that once worked in certain situations often stop working when they're coming from a power over paradigm. It is about, I often say, parenting is something, I learned this myself, parenting is something you do with the child, not to the child. And it's the same thing in any situation. When you're growing a business, when you are, I'm finishing my book, you have your book published. When you're in that process, you're working with your editor, you're working with the publisher, you're working, with social media, your PR people. Ideally, it's a team that works together for the highest and the greatest good of what's in that book, so it will uplift humanity. So if people come to it, they come to it from very different places and different consciousness. So how do you know? You pause, you caught yourself, you catch yourself, you have a meeting with your team and you say, this is the intention.
Yeah.
So what can I expect? This is what I would like to experience. What can I expect? This is how I'm going to be. I'm in integrity with my word. So what will we do here? What's our agreement? What are we committed to creating in this dialogue, in this promotional season? It's really about being so awake and aware and kind. You're going to call this person up. I don't know if other people take the time to acknowledge that. And then you get to do your work so you don't do it again.
Right.
Right. Because sometimes people will think, well, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I think years ago we had this conversation and I had said to you, like, I want to tell women to stop saying I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Just stop. No more. Pause and reflect on what it is you're wanting to amend, and then you can say, I'm sorry that I was rude, or I apologize. And, my commitment is not to do that again. But the amends is very different than just an apology. So
yeah,
that is
you,
where I
you
stand.
inspired me so much so that I stop women all day long and say, stop saying you're sorry. No, nothing to be sorry about.
Right.
Because speaking of being in a pervasive culture also of domination, systems of domination, women have been made wrong for the slightest of moves. And in a case where I'm crossing a crosswalk and a woman bumps into me and she says, I'm sorry, perhaps, and I turned her and I go, that's nothing to be sorry for, excuse me would work. But
That's exactly that. Those are the
sorry.
words that I invite my friends and clients to say. Excuse me.
Or,
Please
yeah.
excuse me.
Impeccability with words is another way of cleansing and healing and and thank you so much for bringing up pausing. And I call it for slowing down to the sound or the speed of awe and wonder. Really, what's going on here? If you can catch yourself, and I think that takes a practice, and all about 21-day practices. I know you've done them and you've coached them, and they're wonderful. Yeah, we retrain our brains literally through neuroplasticity. So practicing these things before the match is struck, right? So they become part of your operating system, part of your personality. The archetype that you're carrying, perhaps that crone energy or them. Yeah. Right. And so, the power of slowing down is so powerful, no matter what it is you're doing. There is, a little trick that I do also, and I take the word just, J-U-S-T, right? And I say, just practice taking the word J-U-S-T out of your vocabulary and see if it works better. I can't tell you how often I erase that when I'm typing or now when I'm speaking. And it's a habit now not to discount what I'm talking about. Oh, I'm just calling to say I love you. No, I love you. I'm calling to say you.
Another great tool is to notice how much one is saying I.
Yes.
Because in a relationship, so there's all different kinds of relationships. I actually did a live about this the other day. So some relationships, and I know Martin Luther King Jr. talked about, the different eros and agape and the utilitarian. So I call some relationships, there are some people that are very transactional, and it's It's really about what they can get. It's really not a mutual give and take relationship. It can be very transactional. There's also people that it's always about, what can you do for me, which is somewhat transactional, but then the other person's the same. So it's this jockeying, for power. And then there's one where there's a mutual give and take, where it's about we. So it's always really helpful. And I notice a lot as just the observer that I am. I notice a lot when people talk about themselves. I notice a lot when people are very self-promoting. I notice a lot about when people are seemingly very interested in the other person, but I think that's probably because of my intuitive psychic mediumness, but because I can feel what's not being said. So when I'm in mixed company, I can feel, that space, that waiting to dive in.
Yeah.
And it, more than anything, when you talk about healing or eliminating the generational patterning, so much of it is about noticing and being responsible, right? So a lot of people don't want to really be responsible. So there's this very subtle shifting and moving around. It's really not about me, it's about that person. Or there's this fake humility that really emerges from from somebody who probably is carrying a lot of shame. So there's this fake humility of, oh, I'm so sorry. I know I did this and I shouldn't have said this, but this is what I really want. And here's the thing, and I really believe in you. And so it's coming from a different place. It's really coming from an unmet need of wanting to connect and feel loved. So noticing and being responsible and being real about what's happening, at least with one other person, so you can really move forward with what you're here on this earth plane to transmit, to be, to share, to generate, to build.
Yeah, and it's really time that we show up with those skills in our authentic nature, our planetary gifts in their full integrity, because our world is aching for change. This is our collective moment of choice. We are in a liminal space as humanity, right? And we don't know where we're going, but we know we're on our way. And the sign of that is the piling on of crises. But at the same time, another sign of it is the awakening of so many visionaries and futurists and thought leaders. And more and more and more of these conversations are just proliferating faster than the hate mongers and the war and destruction. And so what does that mean? That means we're a part of that. Culture isn't anything more than a collective agreement by all of us. So what am I agreeing to? And I just have to circle back and say, thank you for bringing up the I, because I just wrote an article from the Me to We Trends magazine on the problem of me society. And it's not what you think, right? Me society. And I speak about what happened if we all focused on me, the me. What if we all focused on that, as long as we were living that integrity? Because that's exactly what the world needs right now. We all need to do that, as long as it's in that enlightened self-interest of serving one another. But we can't do that if we're not pausing, awareness, and remembering our connection to everybody and everything.
I have a slight, I do agree, but I have a slight tweak on that, because there's this piece of sovereignty that I'm very dedicated to. And it really came up during the pandemic, where there was this sense of of doing something for other people.
Mhm.
And that may have gone that may have gone against what people care about. So life begins and ends with each of us being in integrity with our own values. It's not moral, it's an integrity with what are our values. So I think it's very important to consider the seventh generation's principle. How are my thoughts, my words, and my actions impacting my children and the next 7 generations? It's something that I really consider a lot. And then also, I think about having done PR in the entertainment industry for so many years. I'm very, very sensitive to campaigns and to publicity. And I really believe that it's very important that people check in with their hearts and follow what is right for them and their families without the risk of penalty and elimination and condemnation and the like that occurred. I think that each of us knows what is right for ourselves, and that no parent knows their child better than themselves. And for me, the minute the government starts to invade a private experience, my antenna go up. So I am wholeheartedly somebody who believes in creating a world that is kind and just, that serves the highest and the best for each and all of us. And I am also somebody who really believes in bodily autonomy and health sovereignty and sovereignty. We are sovereign beings.
Right.
And it's important to include that. There's a very, when I think of the me, it's a little variation on that,
Mhm.
because I think there is that tendency for very self-serving people to only do what pleases them.
Yeah.
If
Sure.
it feels good, then I'm going to do that, but it might harm another person.
Right.
But I'm widening the lens a little bit to that conversation, only because I witnessed what happened, and it was harrowing. And the divisiveness that is in our culture, as you're speaking about, the crises that are happening right now are all emerging, I believe, from people's sense of separation with the divine. When if they
Yes.
were completely connected to the divine, there wouldn't be so many of the issues. But there is united we stand, divided we fall.
Yeah. And that shows up also in our separation with our planet. And this is where
Absolutely.
what enculturated us to lose our connection. We were so busy looking down at what we could take from the earth, we stopped looking up. And that is, it's all mutually dependent on one another to have reverence
Yeah.
for not just the earth, but everyone, and including
Yeah.
ourselves. And I totally wholeheartedly agree with you. And thank you for that clarity. I think I'm going to use the I word. I think it's very important.
Well, the I word has, the I word
Yeah.
has a place.
Yeah, sure.
I in sacred community and sacred relationship, that is not the intimate. We're all intimate with each other. Life is about relationship. That's why it's so important to think about the earth that we walk on, because we're in relationship with her. And that's what's been so devastating, is to see that disrespect. So we're talking about the patriarchy, and we're talking about the reemergence and of the feminine, the honoring of the feminine. And then there's this complete disconnection of from the earth, and being in reverence and appreciation for all that we get. Same as reverence for the mother, reverence for the woman. And so it's that old adage, what we do in one place, we do in every place. So there's nothing wrong with speaking about the I. It is about noticing when we're in company where there's mostly somebody who's speaking from that and not bringing in the we.
Right. And it's, when you're speaking about dialogue, right? We're thinking, how can I contribute? And it really is about the sacred art of listening and bringing in the word reverence again. I mean, practicing reverence
Yeah.
is a worthy practice, reverence for
Yes.
anything, because what it does is it strengthens the reverence muscle. Everything becomes reverent.
Yeah, listening to you, hearing what makes your heart sing,
Yeah.
what has you, when I mean, as you're writing the book, and I love your book, by the way, as you were writing it, I think about often what has somebody decide that they're going to get out of bed every day when that mom who's got to get up and take care of the family, after, when you read like the invitation, that beautiful poem, after a night of despair, what is it that has that person put their feet flat on the ground, get up and walk out and take care of the kids, or show up somewhere and be that person, finish, that book and have that beautiful book. It's so much emanates from our relationship with the divine, that we are here on a purpose, with
Right.
a mighty purpose that goes beyond anything we think we know.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned responsibility a number of times. And here we are, Western women. We're women of privilege. Majority of my audience is Western people of privilege. And to remember that privilege
Mm-hmm.
is, really takes me from questioning my responsibility to fully owning it. And um, and we have the privilege to live into our authentic self. It's not so easy for the women of Iran right now, or
Just thinking
the
that.
people, the fighters that are fighting for their life in Ukraine. And we're sensitive to all of that. We're not discounting that one bit. Yet making the point that, like the Dalai Lama said, the Western women will heal the world, which has always kind of rubbed me.
Yeah.
I do believe it's everyone, but the point that we have the ultimate privilege. Western people do have a privilege with our spending power, with our choices, particularly in this country. So your fight for bodily, sovereignty, your fierce determination to bring moms to really, I with the time that we have left, and we don't have a lot of time, but I'd really love for you to just say something about your work with the Million Mamas movement, and also your coaching
Sure.
offerings.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, the Million Mamas movement was birthed from a vision. So Michael Beckwith is one of my mentors, and I learned the life visioning process, which he created, which I'm sure in other modalities, or other circles, there's variations. And I follow the life visioning process. And through one sitting that I had, I got up and I went to the gym, and I was on the elliptical, and I'm going back and forth. And all of a sudden I heard Million Mamas March. And I remember I was looking at something, and I'm like, oh, it must be my father-in-law, Arthur, who's communicating. He took my husband to the Million Man March. He was a civil rights leader. That's Arthur. Hi, Arthur. And I'm like going back and forth. And then I hear it again. And then I hear Washington, D.C., and I hear Mother's Day. And I'm thinking, what? So my experience at that time, I just said yes. That I had been doing heart-centered parent coaching, and I had been in a place of how more can I serve? What is more for me to do? And so I got this, and I had never gotten this. I had no idea. I was so new to any kind of building a business. I was an independent contractor. People hired me, and I spoke or I coached and I did, but not a march? Like, what are we talking about here? And I was scared, so scared. And because I really didn't know what I was doing. And I felt like I couldn't possibly let anybody know, and then I'm meeting like with beloved Kathy Eldon, and she's like, what are you going to do? And how are you going to think? And I'm like, it's a vision, it's consciousness. Like, how do I articulate this? So long story short, uh, within a couple of weeks after the Million Mamas March, maybe in a month, I was told, it's a movement. It's not just, as they say, a moment, it's a movement. And I was like, oh, okay. Because I had been doing empowering work for moms and for women. So I was like, okay, I think I understand that. But fast forward, that is how the Million Mamas movement was birthed and earthed, was through the introduction of the Million Mamas March. And my work with moms and my commitment is to restore the sanctity of the mother in our society and to empower women to trust themselves, to reconnect with that wisdom that is ageless, that is within them, that allows them to become confident moms and the women that they've dreamed of being. So I have the Awakened Mother Academy, which is going to be open. The doors are going to open. It's going to be opening in December to start in January. But I do my work. I work with women one-on-one. I offer group programs, healing the mother wound. I also talk about spiritual solutions in trying times, and I do group programs, and I think I said that. And I also speak. I speak at different centers and to different groups. So I I'm just really dedicated to women reclaiming themselves, and that motherhood is cherished. The greatest contribution to society that women make is through children. And that does not mean if you have not birthed a child that you
Right.
do not have worth, because women are mothering in so many ways, projects and movements and books and on and on. So I'm just really devoted and committed to really restoring the sanctity of that mother in our world, in our collective, and evolving beyond the old paradigms, the limiting beliefs, the limiting opportunities into that free and full self-expression.
Well, as a mother of a mother who's a mother
To a grandmother.
from a grandmother,
Yes.
I thank you. I thank you for this work. And as a mother of that mother, I'm only sorry I did not know you when I was raising her.
Mm.
She managed okay,
She
and she did a
did.
brilliant job. I can't wait for her to be watching this. And where can everybody find you?
So I am on all social media platforms. You can find me on Instagram at Wendy Silvers, and that's Silvers. You can email my assistant hello at wendysilvers.com. I have a website, wendysilvers.com. And I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to connecting with you and supporting you, and seeing how I can support you, so
Yeah,
we can really create a world where women and mothers and children are cherished.
thank you, Wendy.
You,
Thank you so much for being here. I love you dearly. I'm so grateful for you and the next, all that you're birthing for the next 7 generations.
Thank you for all you're doing, Sandy. Thank you for your book and your work. You are just so beloved. Thank you. So many blessings and love to you.
Bye.